Kevin Porter Jr. was born in Seattle, Washington on May 4th, 2000. Coming from an athletic background, Kevin's father was into many sports, playing football, basketball, and baseball at Rainier Beach High School in Seattle. At the age of 4, Kevin's father was shot 5 times and killed while trying to help someone that was being attacked. As Kevin got older, with the loss of his father in mind, he insisted that he enroll at Rainier Beach High School, following in his father's footsteps. Kevin's mother would often go to games, saying that Kevin reminds her of his dad, and it's like his dad is living through him, but he doesn't know. A lot of Kevin's motivation comes from his father, saying these inspiring words as a junior. I wish he was here, but it motivates me to be there for my family and play hard. Sometimes I feel there's a lot of pressure, but this is what I wanted. I'm not going to make any excuses. I'm going to live up to my expectations. As a junior, Kevin was a 4-star recruit, leading his high school basketball team that had a history of success. At that point, Kevin already reached 2 state championships with Rainier Beach as a starter. In those 2 years, Porter played with players that ended up going to the Pac-12 in college, as well as DeJounte Murray, who's currently a top player on the San Antonio Spurs. As a senior, Kevin averaged an impressive stat line of 27 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 assists, leading Rainier Beach to a 22-7 record and to the state championship game. At the end of the season, Kevin was named Washington Mr. Basketball by the State Coaches Association. Kevin was now a 5-star recruit by recruiting services 247 Sports and Rivals, and a 4-star recruit by ESPN. However, Kevin already committed to the University of Southern California in the summer after his junior season. Heading into college, Kevin had some rough times with injuries as he ended up missing half of his preseason practices and a couple of games throughout the year. Also dealing with some other adversity, Porter was suspended indefinitely during the season because of conduct issues, and it sounded like Porter had a good chance of being kicked off of the team. In a statement, the USC coach stated, "We'll reevaluate his future with the program this week." Thankfully for Porter, he was able to finish the season with USC. Only playing in 21 of the 33 games possible for USC that season, Porter didn't really play too good, averaging about 20 minutes, scoring under 10 points, and getting 4 assists per game. With a pretty unimpressive freshman season, Porter decided to declare for the 2019 NBA Draft. He was a polarizing prospect, with one writer calling him one of the most divisive prospects in years, saying that he was a risk. Others wrote, if you ask NBA teams to peg his draft range, they'll give you an answer anywhere from a late lottery all the way down to the early second round. Analysts said that he lacked good decision making, as he didn't always make the right plays, and some people thought that he should have stayed another year in college. Also mentioned was the incidents with his character, as Porter had run-ins with his coach, and he overall did not have a good reputation for being mature, focused, or having discipline. During the 2019 NBA Draft, teams ended up being fairly cautious, but Porter still ended up being picked in the first round. With the 30th pick in the draft, the Milwaukee Bucks got Porter, but by the end of draft night, he ended up with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Playing for a pretty trash Cavaliers team that had 19 wins and 63 losses the year before, there wasn't any crazy expectations for the team or for Porter. Sadly for Porter, his character was put into question only 6 games into his rookie season, and he ended up getting a 1-game suspension. Porter was suspended for running straight into a referee, causing the official to stumble forward, nearly injuring the man. Alright, maybe this bump-in with the referee wasn't actually that bad, and many people didn't think he should have been suspended for this action. However, this was just the beginnings of his incidents. In his rookie season, Porter played in 50 of 65 games possible for the Cavaliers, as the season got cut short. In those 50 games, he started in 3 of them, and averaged about 23 minutes, 10 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. Not a crazy good season, but it wasn't bad for the rookie. On a Cavaliers team that doesn't get too much exposure, there was no reason for Porter to be a common name heard in NBA conversations, but Porter got himself into some trouble. In August of 2020, Porter was accused of punching a woman in the face. According to a report from Cleveland police, a 26-year-old woman and a 19-year-old woman were leaving their apartment when Porter and his sister approached them. Porter's sister and the 26-year-old woman exchanged words, and Porter's sister then swung and punched the 26-year-old in the face. At the same time, Porter was alleged to have thrown a drink in the face of the 19-year-old before ripping her wig off and punching her in the left side of the face, which caused slight swelling that was visible at the time the police report was taken. There was also 3 women who corroborated the story of the 2 victims. Currently, I don't know what's happening with that case, but that was only the beginning of Porter's legal issues. About 2 months after the alleged physical assault incident, it was now October, and Kevin raised some concerns when he posted a black square on his Instagram with the message, "Do you ever wish to see the end of your time?" After this ominous post, Cavs officials and teammates reached out, and Porter deleted his Instagram account. Porter then later posted a message on Twitter, and within that message it said, "I'm fine, been through my worst times already, can't get worse than what I've already been through. Love and thank you." And that post was also later deleted. After this concerning incident, there was more questionable events to come. About 3 months after the initial incident where Porter allegedly punched a girl in the face, he got into some more legal trouble. It was now about a month before the NBA's regular season was set to start, and Porter got into a scary crash at 2 a.m. in the morning. Even though his Mercedes Benz was pretty messed up, that was the least of his problems, as Porter ended up getting arrested for weapons charges. When police looked through the car, they found a handgun and a little bit of marijuana. Also, the officers asked Porter if he was drinking earlier in the night, to which Porter admittedly said yes. However, thankfully for Porter, the officers said there was no clear signs of impairment, so he avoided DUI charges. And honestly, it seems pretty lucky that he didn't suffer any major injuries from the crash and was only arrested for weapons charges. Porter ended up getting released on bail, and the charges against him were eventually dismissed. As the NBA season started, Porter wasn't playing any games, and this was reportedly due to personal matters. Now we can assume that there was definitely some personal matters going on with Porter because of all the incidents that he was a part of, and with those personal matters, we may also be able to assume that the Cavaliers were growing a little frustrated with the young talent. By the middle of January, Porter had still played no games for the Cavaliers, and the Cavs were going to make some moves to better their future. In one of the most important moves of the NBA season, there was a 4-team trade that sent James Harden to the Brooklyn Nets. Under the radar from all that news, as the league was freaking out about a Nets big three with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden, there was some smaller news that came out of Cleveland. With the James Harden trade, the Cavaliers got Taurean Prince and Jarrett Allen, which were some good pickups for the team, but this trade would end up causing some troubles in the locker room. And what I think was a pretty dumb thing to do by the Cavaliers, they ended up moving in their new player, Taurean Prince, into Kevin Porter Jr.'s locker, which consequently led to Porter having his locker and belongings moved as well. When Porter came to see this, he was quite surprised and was rightfully upset. However, it was the way he dealt with the situation that was inappropriate. Porter allegedly began yelling and at one point threw food before getting, quote, combative with general manager Koby Altman. Now, this just added on to the many other negative incidents with Porter in the previous months. And the Cavs had enough, so they decided they wanted him off the team. And that's exactly what happened. A few days after the incident, the Cavaliers traded Porter to the Rockets in exchange for a second-round pick. Porter seemed okay with the trade, as after it he said, "Cleveland, thank you for giving me a chance to change not only my life, but my family's as well, and believing in me. To the beloved city, the fans, my brothers I gained, the coaching staff, and the entire organization, I appreciate you and won't ever take the relationships we have for granted. Everything we shared together was real, and it will always be a forever love." Porter was now on a Rockets team that just lost James Harden and had all the room in the world for improvement. This seemed like the best possible outcome for Porter. He would now be in a situation with a team that only had one true star in John Wall, who happened to be traded to the team just that year. Once Porter got to the Rockets, he was sent to their development league team, the Rio Grande Valley Vipers. This was a really good move for Porter, as he averaged both the most points and assists in the G League, which is quite impressive. After 15 games in the G League, the Rockets called Porter up to their team, and he's been playing very well with the team ever since. Starting in 22 of the 25 games he's played, Porter was averaging over 30 minutes per game, as well as over 16 points, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds per game. Now, although Porter has been playing quite impressively with the Rockets, there's still been some even more recent troubles with his character. Near the end of April, the NBA issued a $50,000 fine to Porter for violating the league's health and safety protocols. The fine resulted from a visit to a club in Miami, which he visited about a week earlier. Porter didn't go alone to the club. He was with teammate Sterling Brown, who ended up getting attacked and very bloodied up at the scene. I'm going to show you a little clip of that video, and there's a little blood, so if that freaks you out, just look away for about 10 seconds. So right here in the video, you can see Sterling with his shirt off, and I think he's using it to stop the bleeding, and you can see it's quite bad. In the next clip, you're going to hear Porter say, "They stole my wallet," and he seems very upset about the situation.
They stole my wallet.
So it seems like the pair got run up on and robbed, and Sterling probably got slashed with a knife, as there's quite a bit of blood, and one of the officers said they looked like he had some deep cuts on his face. Sterling also needed some heavy stitching from the wounds on his face. Even though the two got roughed up and apparently robbed, they didn't want to speak to the police. The police department's report stated, "Upon attempting to assist both males and gather information as to what occurred, both males became belligerent and refused to cooperate. Several attempts were made to gather information from Brown, who kept insisting he did not want to provide this information. He wanted rescue only to take him to the hospital. Several attempts were made to gather information from Brown, who kept insisting he did not want to provide his information. He only wanted rescue to take him to the hospital." It's unclear why they didn't want to talk to the police, but we can assume it's because they were breaking the NBA's league policy and they didn't want to get in trouble. Because of this incident, Porter had to miss 3 games because of the league's mandatory quarantine period. None of this seemed to faze Porter though, because as soon as he rejoined the Rockets, he was balling out, and he broke some records in the process. On April 29th, the Rockets were facing up against the Milwaukee Bucks, one of the best teams in the league. The game was extremely high scoring, with the Rockets scoring 143 points, beating the Bucks, who scored 136 points. The crazy thing that happened in this game was the fact that Porter scored 50 points. Kevin Porter Jr., being a 20-year-old, was the youngest player to ever score 50 points while getting 10 assists in a game, surpassing LeBron James' record by a margin of over 2 years. Porter also became the youngest player in Rockets history and one of the youngest players in NBA history to score 50 points in a game. Many people said that the game was very James Harden-esque, which is really cool because Porter often says he admires Harden. Porter has been through his fair share of ups and downs, but the potential for greatness remains. Hopefully he can find it within himself, or even find some good mentors that can help him stay out of trouble and achieve his goals. Even though it already seems like Porter has had one of the most interesting careers of players in the NBA, he just turned 21. I think he has a very bright career ahead, as he already is averaging some great stats and broken some impressive records. What do you think Kevin Porter Jr.'s potential is? Is he going to be the Rockets' next star? Will his incidents of poor character sideline his career? Like, comment, subscribe, and thanks for watching.